Now let's get into our hot matchups. Why don't you kick things off, Manny?
Yeah, so for my hot matchup of the week, I know you guys think I'm going to pick the Eagles, which it was very, very tempting. I almost did because the Eagles are facing the Rams. That's going to be a fun game. Honestly, the highest scoring game of the week, in my opinion, is going to be the Lions versus the Ravens. Two powerhouses, Lions for the NFC, Ravens for the AFC. They're trying to fight for position this year because they're guys that have been in the playoffs in the last few years. They just can't break through, win that full Super Bowl. So they're going to be looking to prove themselves here this week. And so I think whoever wins out of that, you're going to see in conference championships. So obviously, if you have Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, you don't let that one game fool you. Derrick Henry is a must start every single week. Wide receivers, Zay Flowers coming on strong. He came in strong near the second half of last year. I think this year there's going to be he's going to be more consistent. So if you have that nice floor, high ceiling, a great player to have. You might even be able to buy low on him right now, so people don't know that he's really going to do that all year long. Obviously, on the Lions side, I've talked about the Lions for the last few years. Ever since they got that duo of Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, it's been a solid backfield. Amon-Ra, you have him in the league. I mean, absolutely went off last game, 3 touchdowns. He was a freaking monster.
Total monster.
It was such a fun game to watch because the Lions said, "Fuck you, we're just gonna throw some bombs on you," and they put a 50 burger on that ass. And they said, "You in our division, dog. Of course we're gonna run up the score." Like what?
I
what the
know.
fuck's wrong with you?
I'd expect nothing less. I love it, man.
As a fantasy owner, I am super pleased because Dan Campbell says, "Fuck your feelings. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna run up the score on your ass any way I can." And there's a couple other coaches like that over the last few years. I love to see it until it's my team getting smacked. Then it's not so fun.
Yeah. But it is great to see, though, especially from a fantasy perspective. And I remember, man, when I was picking, when I was drafting Amon-Ra, I know I was talking it out with you, and I was deciding between Puka and Amon-Ra because I said Puka's got the bigger ceiling, but Amon-Ra's got the safer floor. And so far, it's been the opposite, where Puka's giving you like an even 20, 25 points. And, we first couple weeks been a little up and down with Amon-Ra, but he came back in a big way. And I expect that to steady out to just some solid, really high-scoring games for him.
Oh, man, he's going to be top 3, it looks like. I was wrong. Top number 4 wasn't good enough. It's number 3.
Yeah, and I had Puka, I think, at number 3, and he's right around there. But I am most excited for that game, admittedly. But for my hot matchup, I have the Bills versus the Dolphins. Honestly, I think this is going to be the ass whooping of the year. And although this season has been all over the place, there's a lot of teams stepping up we didn't expect. It wouldn't surprise me if this somehow turns out to be close. I just seriously doubt it. This is what I think is going to happen. By the end of the first quarter, the Bills are up by about 2 scores, and then that lead gets progressively wider as the game continues, and they're going to score any way they want. Josh Allen will probably have a throwing and rushing touchdown in the first half, and I expect James Cook to have a rushing touchdown too. And then, the second half, we're going to see a lot of throwing from Miami trying to play catch up. And, the thing is, if you were disappointed in the Bills receivers last week, remember, this is par for the course. They're going to score a lot of points. You just don't know exactly who it is. But if this turns out to be a shootout where, the Bills are just having fun and Miami's trying to play catch up, they could go off again. You just never know who the primary target will be for Josh Allen, just like Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Anyway, I think the Dolphins will be forced to throw the ball in the second half, leading to an above-average output from Tyreek, Waddle, Achane, and maybe even Tua. But I wouldn't start Tua. I would probably start the other 3 and just cross my fingers for garbage time. If I have him on my team, obviously I'm putting Achane in. He looked amazing last week. But I would probably play Tyreek and Waddle too. And, one-sided games aren't typically fun to watch, but they can be really fun if you need some fantasy points in that fourth quarter.
Well, let me tell you something here. We were talking about earlier about Dan Campbell running that score up. Well, I'm gonna need Sean McDermott to run that score up tomorrow because if you watch the Bills last game, Josh Allen, everybody's complaining, oh, he didn't have 12, he only had 12, 15 points, right? Depending on what kind of league you're in. And unfortunately, the game script just called for a better run plan. Like they couldn't stop the run. They ended up, I think James Cook had 2 touchdowns on the ground, right?
And
Yeah.
what was the final gap? It was like 20 points, right?
Yeah, it was a ass whooping for sure. But they were going most of the touchdowns were rushing, right? And none of them went to Josh Allen. I think they even handed it on the 1 yard line to James Cook one play. So
Yeah, I remember that.
like that fake out they did. So I could see that going. I hope it goes that way, right? As far as Miami, I mean, this guy is basically playing for his job. So Mike McDaniel's going to pull everything out of his playbook right now and just call like these wild ass plays because he's going to want to get a job as an offensive coordinator. So you're right. It could definitely be pretty explosive on the Miami side. I'm not going to hold my breath outside of H-N, but it should be a fun game overall.
Let's get into our cold calls. For my cold call, I hate to pick these two teams again, but I'm going with the Steelers and the Patriots. I'm not confident in the offense for either team. I know the Patriots looked all right last week, and I know the Steelers looked all right in week 1, but the Steelers completely fell off in week 2, and the Patriots lost to the Raiders in week 1, and they only scored 13 points. So, last week they looked good, but they played the Miami Dolphins. That's why I'm rubbing my hands together for the Bills playing Miami this week. I just think this matchup is going to be a defensive battle. The defense for both these teams has been average, but I think they're both trying to prove their top 10. Their top 10 units. That's how they came into the season. They probably want to get back and prove to everyone, yeah, we are. And I'm not starting any offensive players with confidence aside from maybe Jaylen Warren. I know Ramondre, it looked good last week, but he's always peaks and valleys his entire career. So I'm not confident in starting him either. So I'm not really focused on any player from either team.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a low scoring affair for sure. Aaron Rodgers only has so much juice left. You know what I mean?
Yeah, week 1 he came out slinging. He looked awesome, spread the ball out. But yeah, man, I mean, that was against the Jets too. Jets, they got a tough secondary, and he looked really good. But last week against Seattle, and I know Seattle's defense is really good, but they really fell off. And I mean, the Patriots have a respectable defense, so I'm not banking on this being a high-scoring game.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, for my cold matchup, I ended up going with Saints and Seahawks. Two teams I was not high on this year at all. Obviously, for any fantasy teams, I typically try to stay away from struggling teams. Some people say it's good to get the running back for a struggling team, but when they're behind, they're not going to be running the ball very much. So, and these are two teams I decided not to touch this offseason or a season in the draft. That means I was fading, Smith and Najigba. So I was also fading Kenneth Walker this year in my fantasy rankings just because I didn't want anything. And then, of course, I had Alvin Kamara a little bit farther back as well because when if you look at him last year, he went super hard all year long. He ended up being injured around week 13 or something, week 14. He was out for the rest of the season. So if you had Kamara out through the season, you lost him when you really needed him the most. So as far as a fantasy matchup, I think it's going to be besides Smith and Jigba getting some burn there. Obviously, one of those Seattle Seahawks might get a touchdown too. It's just going to be a really sloppy, ugly game between two quarterbacks that'll probably not be starting after this season. So,
yeah, I faded both of those teams this year while I was drafting too, and I know that Kenneth Walker looked awesome last week, but he did not look great in week 1, and I don't know what's going on with that backfield. But
Don't take the bait. Don't take the bait because Kenneth Walker is going to look great until he gets hurt, and he has gotten hurt each of the last 3 seasons. So he's not someone that you can count on reliability.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to take Walker, then you're going to want Charbonnet on your team too. Just yeah, Charbonnet might be great as the lone back, but at the same time, he had 15 carries for 10 yards last week. I mean, I know the Steelers are tough, man, but they couldn't stop Kenneth Walker, but they could stop Charbonnet. So again, I'm confused about that backfield. I'm staying away from that game too, and I don't have really any of those guys on my. I have Charbonnet on my bench in a bunch of leagues, but I don't have much invested in either team. So